Salutations, sleuths. I'm Gina.
I'm Maria.
And we are
Fortuitous.
Boom!
We are making like Han and flying solo this week. Birdie is somewhat flying. Birdie is trying to make it out of the nest, meaning it is me, Maria, and myself, and the mic and camera today. That is it. I don't have my regular co-host, Gina. She's taking some time off for the wedding, and I just couldn't line up a special guest for this week. And also, I have dabbled with the idea of doing a solo episode, so it was like opportune moment to just go ahead and give it a try. Why the fuck not? So we'll see if people like it. If people don't like it, then I will do my best. Okay, let's just dive right on in, because I've got a very interesting tale. It's a story about a couple sisters who I have never heard about. They are the Van Buren sisters, and they had quite the run-in with the police, but not for what you would think. And I don't know if anyone would be able to guess as to why they had run-in with the police, because for me, it was absolutely buck wild that this was a thing and it was illegal. So the Van Buren sisters, they were two sisters from the early 1900s who were very progressive, and they were ahead of their time, and they wanted to prove, and this is high level, they wanted to prove that women were more than able and more than capable of participating in the war. Because this is around the 1916-20s time, so World War I is a happening, and they wanted to be able to contribute, but back then women weren't able to partake in the war. So they wanted to prove that they could, and they wanted to prove that they could be dispatch riders specifically. Dispatch riders were riders that would send important messages from point A to B, C, D, wherever. And so in order to prove their point, they decided they were going to ride their motorbikes all the way across America, meaning over 5,000 miles from one end, one coast to the next. And along the way, aside from weathering the normal elements and dealing with the typical hardships that you would have riding a motorbike across the continental US, they were pulled over many a times by the police because they were wearing pants. They, as women, were wearing pants, and not only was it taboo, but it was actually illegal for women to wear pants in public, which I did not know. I thought it was just forbidden and not necessarily illegal. Wearing pants as a woman was illegal across the United States until 1923, which blows my goddamn mind. And then, so not only did they make like pants legal, wearing pants legal in the 1920s, but as like another like fuck you because you got your way, woman, they made pants, but they withheld pockets from us. We are in 2024, and it is still mind-blowing when a woman gets a piece of clothing or apparel that does have pockets, because if a woman has a dress or she's got shorts or pants or any piece of clothing that has pockets, you bet your bottom dollar that she's telling you about it that entire event, entire party. Because I am also one of those ladies, and literally this past weekend I got brunch with a friend. She was wearing this nice new dress, and the first thing that she said after I complimented the dress was like, "Thanks, it's got pockets." So they gave us the pants, but they are still withholding the pockets mostly. But so that's high level nutshell. We're going to talk about the Van Buren sisters, who they were, what they did, and the fact that there were the pants police. Pants police, in my opinion, has got to be in the top 3 worst kind of police, following or at least behind the fun police. So if the name Van Buren sounds familiar, it's because there was a Martin Van Buren who was Mr. Presidente of the United States. He was the eighth one specifically. And some interesting or quote-unquote fun facts about Marty Mart here is that he was one of the founders of the Democratic Party. So if you're a part of that party, you have him to thank for that. It's the people that are not eating the dogs and the cats. Actually, it is the people that are eating the dogs and the cats. And he had a couple nicknames. He was known to his enemies as the Sly Fox because he was witty and he was cunning. And to his friends, he was known as the Little Magician. Why? Could not fucking tell you. When I try to look it up, why did his friends call him the Little Magician? What I could find was that he was, quote, only about 5 feet 6 inches tall. He was trim and erect. He dressed fastidiously, and his impeccable appearance bellied his amiability and his humble background. He is of Dutch descent, no relation to the DJ Armin van Buren, who is also a Dutch DJ and producer of the dance electronic genre. I looked it up, but apparently Van Buren is a very common last name, kind of like Smith in the US. But nothing I could find really helped me understand why Mr. President Martin was known as the Little Magician, because 5'6" to me really isn't that little, especially back then. But what do I know? It is neither here or there. What is here, though, is that he was a relative in some way, shape, or form of the Van Buren sisters. Depending on the source, he was either their grandfather, or something of that nature. He did pass before the Van Buren sisters and him could meet, though. However, it would seem that they shared the progressive gene, because just like Martin creating the Democratic Party, the Van Buren sisters were also more forward-thinking. They challenged the norms of society, not only with wearing the pants, but they were also trying really hard to get women the right to vote, because this is back in early 1900s, and women couldn't partake in voting, they couldn't partake in the war. And so their whole adventure was to try and prove that, yes, they are capable of serving in the war, but also if you could serve in the war, then you had every right to vote. So it was kind of a 2-for-1 thing that they were going for. So the two sisters, you have Adeline, which she went by Addie, and then you had Augusta, who went by Gussie Van Buren. And so they were, from the very get-go, just raised differently than the typical women of that time. And so before we get into their journey, let's put it in reverse, Terry, and talk about who the sisters were. So unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of information on their childhoods, but what we do know is that their mother died while they were younger. So they were raised by their father, who sounded like he was a pretty cool dude. God damn. Sounded like he was a pretty cool dude. They were born into this wealthy New York family in the late 1800s. And this was a time of high society, and women were raised to be very prim and proper and to wear dresses and drink tea and to be seen and not heard. And instead of raising them like that, and I don't know if this is because the mother had passed away and it was the father who had sole control of how they were raised, or if they would be raised this way either way, but his father raised them essentially like sons. And you had the two Van Buren sisters, but then they also had a younger brother, and he raised them all to be, I guess, like sons, and more like, he raised them to be free-spirited children. He raised them to be competitive, and he got them involved in a lot of sports and activities, especially like a lot of activities that you typically wouldn't see women in. And he also raised them to be very independent and confident and competitive. He shared his love for sports with them. And so they ended up partaking in like swimming, sprinting, wrestling, ice skating. They even boxed, which back in early 1900s, that was buck wild for women to do. There was another episode that we did talking about a lot of firsts for women, and we talked about like a certain swimmer that was swimming in the 1920s. So you have the Van Buren sisters that are doing it even before then, before it was like a thing to even do as a woman. You know, instead of being a proper homemaker and a wife, they're sitting here doing these outdoorsy, challenging things that society at the time would frown upon. And when they got a little bit older, that's when they took a liking to a new extreme sport, which was motorbiking in 1913. So war breaks out in Europe in 1914, and Addie and Gussie decide that they want to help. They were active in the National Preparedness Movement, which was a campaign to strengthen the U.S. military. Women, like I mentioned, at that time were not allowed to fight as soldiers. So then they got this brilliant idea that we want to help out. And because we can't fight as soldiers, what we can do is we can be messengers. We can be the dispatch riders. And they had already been riding their bike for a hot minute now. So it's not like they were inexperienced with that or going into it blindly. It's like, we've done this and we know that we can do it. So we will show that other women can do this as well. And because obviously people are not just going to take women's word for it, it was something that they wanted to do. So then they decided they're going to show it and prove it that they could. And that's when they decided that they were going to ride across the entire country. And like I said, they were trying to get two birds with one stone with this type of ride. They wanted to prove that women were capable of serving in the military, but then they wanted to remove any arguments for denying women the right to vote. Because, you know, this is before, I don't know what the years that women got women's suffrage. I should know this. 1919? Don't quote me on that. Shit. I'm going to Google it real quick because I should know this, and I am ashamed that I don't. When could women vote? 1920. Okay. I was pretty damn close. Yeah, so they, not only could women not vote at this time, but they couldn't even wear pants, which is just wild to me. So, patriotically, they began their trek on July 4th, 1916. You cannot get any more American than that. So these enthusiastic, intelligent young women, they aren't going into this willy-nilly or haphazardly. They are going in prepared and with a goal, with determination, and with a plan. So Addie, who is 26, and Gussie, who's 32, they are decked out in long leather coats for the elements, meaning rain, wind, etc. They've got on leather cap and goggles. They are also wearing, like the leather cap is because they don't have helmets as we know them today. Like helmets that we know just weren't a thing at that time, but they did have like leather cap. And then the goggles were to protect their eyes. And then of course, like I've been mentioning, they were wearing military style leather pants. So, you know, they could actually straddle the bike and sit on the bike because we are a fan of practicality. And I will post some pictures, but you can also look them up. They're actually like really badass looking and super cool looking, especially because, you know, it's 1916 and it's got that like vintage filter that we're all trying to get nowadays, like legit boss bitches. And what is also super cool is that they were sponsored by a motorcycle company, specifically the Indian Power Plus motorcycles. At this time, Harley Davidson hadn't popped off yet. They don't pop off till 1920, so like this was the motorcycle company of the time. But it would have been uber cool if you have like these two sisters riding on a couple of Harleys. Regardless, the pictures are still really cool. And then the motorcycles, they're 3-speed Indian Power Plus motorcycles. They weigh about 400 pounds each. And at that time, they cost about $275 a pop, which in today's money is about $8,000 a piece. I have no idea what regular motorcycles go for nowadays. I've never looked it up, but 8,000 sounds kind of right-ish. I don't know. The motorcycles, they had Firestone non-skid tires. They had a gearbox and a 2.5-gallon fuel tank, which was not a really big fuel tank. And then the sisters later on would rant and rave about the Firestone tires because apparently they perform like super well. I think they only experienced maybe 2 punctures over the entire ride, which if you think about it, it's over 5,000 miles and only 2 times that you would get punctures. That's pretty solid. And then with 2 small weatherproof canvas bags for luggage, they began their historical ride in Sheep's Head, New York, and they had the goal of hitting Los Angeles, California. But this did not come without its challenges. It was supposed to only take 30 days, and it actually took twice as long. It took them 60 days, and it's for a myriad of reasons. One, this is the early 1900s, so there are no highways. It is pretty much just all dirt roads at this time. Also, if you think about it today, because you're like, oh, you know, riding a motorcycle across the country, like, no big deal, I could do that. Yes, but this is without GPS. This is on dirt roads, no map. You have to figure out how to use a fucking compass or how to figure out to go from point A to point B in a span of over 5,000 miles. So back then, it was actually very super impressive. I mean, it is super impressive today, but even more so from back then. Robert Van Buren, who is their great nephew, is quoted saying, "Roads did not exist back then, and basically there were no road maps west of the Mississippi. There were just cow passes, dirt trails, wagon trails, and things like that." So can you imagine sitting on a motorcycle and you're trudging along these dirt roads and then you have to follow like road signs? I get lost even with GPS, and then I rely on Siri to reroute me and get to my destination. There was one time years ago, me and my sister were trying to go and visit my grandma who lives in Wapapello, Missouri, which is way down in the boot hill of Missouri. You just keep driving south, and then when you think you've gone south, you just go even more south of Missouri. And when we started this road trip years ago, she lived in the boonies. I mean, she still lives in the boonies, but this was like so country that even like Google Maps didn't have her on their maps. Like you could not plug her address into the GPS. It was just could not find. And so it would take us up to a certain point, and then from there we did have to rely on like a hard copy map and my dad's like written instructions and his hand-drawn map. And when I tell you that we got lost, that is not even scratching the surface. This trip is only supposed to take 2.5 hours to go from St. Louis to Wapapello, Missouri. It is 5 hours later, and we are not even close to Mama, which is our grandma. We are just driving around in circles, and somehow we got so turned around that we actually ended up 5 hours later closer to St. Louis than we did Mama's house. I think we were like we got internet again, and we could see where we were, and we were like just so close to the home. We probably could have seen the arch. And so we called up Mama and we were like, "Sorry, Mama, but we are 5 hours in and we can't find you, so we're just gonna go home." So that's a long story short to say that me and my sister definitely could not do this way back when. These Van Buren sisters are next level and boss bitches. Me and my sister would still be probably in New York 100 years later trying to figure out how to get out of the state. more challenges that they had was they also had to be their own mechanics. So they had to learn to fix their own bikes. I mean, they had to know how the bike came apart, got together, because they had to fix everything. But also the bike is heavy as shit. It's like 400 pounds. So they're having to not only like hold the bike up or like maneuver it with its heaviness, but also fix it while they're doing it under all this weight. And then the bikes, they were V-twin engines, and they were controlled by these hand shift gearboxes and foot operated clutch, meaning that to even operate the motorcycle required phenomenal multitasking ability. So Addie and Gussie, they would handle the throttle with their like thickly gloved left hand, and then using their right hand to control the ignition. People, in 2024, anti-vehicular theft is a stick shift. I 100% believe that there are millions of people that could not do this like these sisters did from way back when. And then a couple other more downsides to the bikes was that like they had a very small gas tank, so they were constantly refilling. It was only 2.5 gallons. And then there were also no shocks. So this is a very painful, bumpy ride on these dirt roads. Third challenge that they had was the weather. They went through sandstorms, they went through downpours, there was just muddy conditions. And according to author William Murphy, who is the author of a book called Grace and Grit, Motorcycle Dispatchers from Early 20th Century, the sisters would later reveal that they would get so tired from struggling through the muddy conditions that they would often fall asleep while riding, and then they would fall into the mud. And then there was a couple times where they nearly ran out of water, especially going through the deserts, which was west of Salt Lake. And then another challenge that you would not be able to conjure up is the pants police. Like I mentioned, it was illegal in many states for women to wear pants, so they got stopped many times once they were west of Chicago. It was a lot of Midwest police stopping them, quote, 6 times, but each time they were released only with a reprimand and if they promised to yeet out of the town quickly. So they never served jail time, but they would get pulled over. So the Van Buren sisters, this cross-country trip was highly unusual for 1916. Unusual in itself, but even more so because they were women. And with that came mixed emotions, high emotions, and lots of emotional headlines. And what is wild and sad is that there are few newspapers that would actually like cover this historical trek because of the time, and the ones that did cover it were mixed. So, I mean, there were some that just could not get over the fact that they were wearing pants. There was a writer at the Denver Post, let me say that again, a writer at the Denver Post that argued that this whole ploy and that the preparedness issue was, quote, serving as an excellent excuse for women to stay away from home, to display physical prowess in various fields of masculine superiority, and to display their feminine contours in nifty khaki and leather uniforms. To which I would say, hell yeah, my khakis are fucking nifty. And you're just upset that they look better on me, my guy, and they contour my curves and not yours, good sir. On the flip side, though, you did have Motorcycle Illustrated reporting that the sisters were expected to show the brothers and fathers of other girls that ladies can ride and still not lose their most valuable asset, which is their femininity. It's 2024, and I feel like we are still having those same conversations, i.e., talk about Ilona Maher and wearing lipstick and playing rugby at the same time. Like, just because you play rugby doesn't mean that you are not feminine. Similarly, with the newspaper headlines, you had the townsfolk in various cities that also had mixed emotions. Some didn't care for them, didn't understand them. It upset them for some reasons that these women who are independent women and have no effect on their lives are riding across the country doing something that they want and that they believe in, wearing pants, which again is hurting no one. And then you had the other side that was highly encouraging them. They were taking pictures with them and were just like all for it. Some even helped them fix their bikes. And then when they were dealing with like 100-degree temperatures in Skull Valley, their fuel tanks were empty and they were almost out of water. There was a prospector, which I had to look that up. It is essentially a treasure hunter. It's someone who goes out with that little metal detector and looks for gold or, treasures. So he's out there in the valley. He sees the two sisters and he sees that they are out of fuel and they are out of water. So he actually tipped off their... No, he didn't. What did he do? He didn't tip off. He topped off their gas tanks, and then he replenished their water supply, and then he did offer them directions. So Addie and Gussie, they were able to continue their journey through Nevada and California. They made a quick stop in Tijuana because why the fuck not? We're here. Why not just go ahead and cross the border and then come back up? And then finally they completed their journey when they arrived in Los Angeles on September 8th of 1916. So as soon as they got back to New York, because they completed this historical feat, they rode over 5,000 miles. They were like, Army, this is what we did. May we now serve as dispatch riders? And the Army was like, nah, fuck you. They said no and just denied their request. They were like, sorry, not sorry. But despite being denied and not making history via that way, they did make history as the first women to cross the continental U.S. on their own motorcycles, and they were the second and third women to drive motorcycles across the continent following Effie Hotchkiss, who she completed the route just 1 year prior in 1915. Addie and Gussie also became the first women to summit the 14,000-foot Pikes Peak in Colorado on motorized vehicles. Because again, there are no super highways, so they're having to take all these back roads and scenic routes. And one of those scenic routes happened to be the 14,000 feet Pikes Peak. So they were the first woman to do so on a motorized vehicle, which was pretty fucking gnarly. That is on my list to hike Pikes Peak. And then May 28, 1923, the U.S. Attorney General declared it legal for women to wear trousers. Wear your britches, bitches. Which again is wild to me that it was 1923. Like, that's only 101 years ago that women were legally allowed to wear pants. I am just stuck on that fact. Like, these women did an amazing thing, and I am just stuck on the fact that it was illegal for them to wear pants. After this amazing journey, and they were denied going into the Army, they did move on with their lives. I mean, they still were fighting the fight. They still tried to get women's right to vote, and then they were still putting in efforts to prove that women were capable of partaking in war. But they did, continue living their lives. So Addie, she obtained her law degree from New York University, and then she continued teaching in the Bronx, and then was married in 1925. And then she also had a daughter that same year named Anne. Gussie, she returned as head of the stenographic unit in New York City, and then she continued to ride the motorcycles until her interest shifted to aviation. And then she got her pilot's license in 1924 and flew in Amelia Earhart's 99s. Yeah, Amelia Earhart's 99s, an international organization that is dedicated to creating a supportive environment and opportunities for female aviators. Addie did pass away in 1949, at only 59 years old, which to me is super young. And then Gussie passed away in 1959 at 75 years old. They were inducted to the AMA Motorcycle Hall of Fame in 2002, and there's a phrase or wording that Gussie used, I guess, throughout her journey, and it's, quote, "Woman can if she will." And that is the story of the Van Buren sisters versus the Pants Police. And I will show for the camera the book that I got. So I ordered this book on Amazon. It's called Head to Head History, The Van Buren Sisters versus the Pants Police. It's by J.F. Fox and Anna Kwan. And I ordered this on Amazon, and when it arrived, it was not what I had expected. I will show it for the camera. For those that cannot see, it is a larger size book. It is hardcover, and it has lots of pictures in it. When I ordered this book, I did not look to see what the reading level was of this book. So it's actually a book for children ages, I think, 6 to 10. I mean, it's a children's book, is all that matters. And it took a whopping 5 minutes to read cover to cover. So I did do a little bit extra research. And moral of the story is read the fine print of your Amazon purchases. This is not the first time that I have been duped by my lack of fine print reading in Amazon. When I got my first apartment, I was excited and I ordered a bunch of stuff. So I ordered, flamingos for my yard. I ordered some chairs for my kitchen table. I ordered curtains, and I got these shiny glittery pillows that looked super cool. And the stuff that arrived was definitely not what the pictures had showed. So part of it is lack of reading, but then the other part of it was, I would say, false advertising, because my set of curtains turned out to be only one curtain, one singular curtain. My pillows were just the pillow covers, did not come with any of the cotton or stuffing on the inside, so I had to go out and buy all of that. I ended up only using one curtain. I didn't order the other side and just made it like this, new artistic, vibey look. And then my flamingos came sans legs, meaning they came without fucking legs. Like, who the fuck wants just half a flamingo? Flamingos are known for standing on one leg. So why wouldn't I get that one leg? Why am I getting just the body of a flamingo? Did I order the legs to complete it? Of course not. So I had 2 flamingos just sitting on my deck, and I had 2 flamingos for literally one day, because I'm not even living in the city. This is living in the county. Someone stole Doris. I named my flamingos Doris and Boris, and someone stole Doris the very first night that I got her. So then I just had Boris sitting there all by himself on my back porch. Let's see, what else? The kitchen chairs I never actually got. I don't know what happened with that, and I never got a refund, and I would end up using my vanity chair. I would pull it from my room into my kitchen and eat on my vanity chair at my dining room table. And then what else? I mean, it was a struggle living in your first apartment, but you know what? I did it. I didn't have a couch for the first year that I lived there. And then my TV that I got as a Christmas gift from my father, it was a smart TV, I think 32 inch, a great starter TV. That ended up staying in the box on the floor of my living room also for a year. It wasn't until I met Vic that was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should turn this bachelor pad, because that's what it was. It wasn't even a bachelorette pad. It was a dude's pad. We turned it more into a home. So, I did get the couch on my own. That was my first like big girl purchase. I got the couch, but we got the TV out of the box. We got it on a table. So then I'm watching stuff on an actual TV and not my phone or my iPad. We got a couple more chairs, and it all came together. But so I would say for the weekly wow is to read the fine print on your Amazon purchases. Like, really look to see what you are ordering. Also, if anyone is looking for a children's book for their child or their niece or nephew, reach out to me and I can hook you up with a really great children's book on the Van Buren sisters. And that is it. So let me know. Do you like the solo episodes? Do you not? I don't know if I do, if I'm being honest. I think I kind of like having the back and forth of someone. And this, went by super quick. And yeah, just let me know. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Maybe I need to improve. Maybe the problem is me. I will just go and I will dwell on that. Okay, bye.